draw off of that Edgewall Innkeeper as we just went back in time.
So we're just a little time walk here as we are going back to the beginning of the matchup here, friends. So just bear with us, friends, as we just figure out where we're going in this matchup. If we're going to jump ahead or if we're just going to kick things off from the beginning once again here. All right. All right, so now we're good to go, friends. Let's get this rocking. I wonder what our first play of the game is going to be.
Yeah, I think what we saw before is going to happen again here as we just see the Edgewall Innkeeper off the top. It looks like our player feeds maybe a little desynced between the two, so we're going to see what happens on Kenta's side of things before it happens on Riku's hand.
Yeah, so we'll just focus on Kenta Harane for the time being. Passes the turn back, no Fire Prophecy, no Brush Fire Elemental, and we'll see the Bone Crusher Giant come down and join the Edgewall Innkeeper, drawing that card and progressing accordingly.
I think one of the notable standout things for a lot of people from Riku Kumagai in that Players Tour Finals weekend was just his facial expressions throughout those matches, where he just looks so thoroughly unamused from his opponents who were playing Reclamation. And I think everybody in chat just kind of connected with that feeling of watching your Team of Reclamation opponent just going off as you're sitting there playing your creatures. Riku was just everyone's hero that day.
Yeah, that was the people's champ for that weekend, for sure. As now we're going to see the Fire Prophecy take care of the bigger creature, Bone Crusher Giant, with the Edgewall Innkeeper swinging in for one. Which card's going to the bottom of the library? Looks to be one of the lands. But is there any other consideration to send something back here?
Not really. You've got more lands than you need in your current hand. You probably want to send the forest back since the pathway is just better and Fabled Passage combos with your Brushfire Elemental. Right now, sitting in Kenta's position, yes, you've kind of stemmed the bleeding from Riku at the moment, but you're behind on board and you've got the hand that has some of the late game tools that you want, and you have it a bit sooner than you need.
Yeah. As we see the Brushfire Elemental swinging in there, not cracking the Fabled Passage. Gonna save that for the next attack.
Yeah, part of saving the Fabled Passage is because next turn, if you can get this Brushfire Elemental to 5 power, that'll ensure that you can cast the Great Henge for 4, which is Kenta's primary game plan here. Mm-hmm. The other benefit to this specific line is you can protect yourself from a Bone Crusher Giant stomp from Riku. Now, if Riku, as he does draw the Bone Crusher Giant, tries to stomp this Brushfire Elemental, Kenta has the ability to save it. Same with casting that Shatter Skull Smashing for 1 or 2, for example.
Yeah. So knowing that the Fabled Passage is available, Bone Crusher Giant likely not going to be cast. For the stomp side, just going to be cast as a creature and gain another card off of the Edgewall Innkeeper.
Yeah, awkwardly for Riku does not have access to 2 green yet, so does end up having to use one of those Kazandu Mammoths as Kazandu Valley to get that second green source onto the battlefield and unlock some of these double green cards in hand.
And on the other side of the battlefield, still looking pretty good here. Now a second Brushfire Elemental. So could go for, getting both of them down, cracking that Fabled Passage and swinging in. But like you said, the game plan here, Great Henge, let's get that down and just start pressing the advantage, getting as many cards as we can off of this powerful artifact.
Yeah, being the player that gets the Great Henge down first, pretty good. And fortunately for Kenta, sitting at a reasonable life total thanks to having access to that Fire Prophecy to remove the first Bone Crusher Giant. But currently, as we see with the Embercleave sitting in Riku's hand, Kenta is considering the maximum amount of damage that he stands to take on the next turn should he go for this Great Henge, which it looks to be, I believe, 11 with that Embercleave. However, if Riku was to draw an untapped land with the Brushfire Elemental as well, this could actually go up to about 17 points of damage should Riku draw exactly Fabled Passage.
Oh my goodness me.
Yeah, and that's really just speaking to the explosiveness and raw power of this Gruul Adventures deck. And part of the reason people choose to play it is just having a hasty landfall creature with such a big gain off of landfall. +2/+2 is not that big on a 1/1, but when you're able to play multiple lands or when you're able to get multiple triggers thanks to something like Fabled Passage, the damage can just rack up so quickly, especially with something like an Embercleave to double that gain as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. So now we have a Great Henge down on one side of the battlefield. There is the possibility for Riku to get a Great Henge down himself. But what is the other consideration here? What's he in the tank about?
Riku could go Brushfire Elemental, pay 3 life to put Shatterskull Smashing into play untapped as a land, and then cast Embercleave, and that would give Riku 14 damage. But he would be quote-unquote all in on the board, while his opponent would be sitting at 4 life thanks to the 2 from the Great Henge. And then if Kenta is able to remove some of these creatures thanks to a card like that Shatterskull Smashing, the follow-up from Riku isn't ideal. But I think from Riku's point of view, there isn't much choice. You just need to put as much pressure on as possible. And I believe this will actually be lethal for Kenta Harane thanks to his own copy of Embercleave plus Brushfire Elemental in hand.
Looks like it's going to be that indeed as we draw Fabled Passage off the top. Talk about value. Here we go. Let's crack this Fabled Passage. Let's go get some red and let's Embercleave our way to victory. Riku Kumagai says, no thank you. You don't get to do any of that as we now go to sideboard. Jeez. It's not often that you expect Fabled Passage to be the hero of the game, but it was in that one, friends, as we're going to take a very short 30-second break. When we come back, we will see the players sideboarding and get into game number 2. See you after this. Back in the flash, we are, my friends. Welcome to the MTG League Weekend. If you're just joining us, I am Ailey Loney alongside Mani Davudi, and we are in the thick of things here between Riku Kumagai and Kenta Harane. So any big surprises there in that first game that we just saw, Mani?
Kenta was able to break serve. We saw that in that game, Riku did start on the play. So in the 7/5 card mirror of this aggressive matchup, being able to win on the draw is definitely a big boost for you, as going into it, Riku had the only real edge of the matchup, which was being on the play. And now that Kenta has won that first game, all of that edge has just been reversed, because even if Kenta loses this game, he will be on the play for the third game. And that's the maximizing of the margins available to him.
Yeah, there's not much else going, besides how do you draw? What do your opening 7 cards look like? And how quickly can you kill your opponent, right? It's just it's such a toss-up as to who would actually win this matchup. And there was actually something that Andrea Mengucci mentioned on Twitter where he says, Gruul on the play has no bad matchups. Now in the Gruul mirror, it's like that's probably the one bad matchup.
Yeah, and looking at the sideboarding from the players, looking pretty close to identical here. The big thing is on the play, Riku did not have the copies of Scorching Dragonfire in, prioritizing being the more aggressive player while on the play. While on the draw, we see one copy of Scorching Dragonfire in from Kenta. And the big notable thing that has come out now in the post-board games is those copies of Brushfire Elemental, 3 taken out for Riku on the play, all 4 taken out for Kenta. So really prioritizing not wanting to get punished by Bone Crusher Giant in the post-board games, and instead trying to have things like Scavenging Ooze and the Akroan War, and most notably Wilt, which is a card that typically you wouldn't expect to see in these creature v creature matchups, but with the prevalence of Embercleave and the Great Henge, you can't really afford to not have some sort of artifact removal.
Oh, for sure. That's why we've seen the wilts come in. And hopefully we'll find their target as we are ready to get going here in game number 2. Take a look at the opening hands. Fire Prophecy, Bone Crusher Giant, Love Struck Beast, and a Shatter Skull Smashing. So not a terrible looking hand there. Got something to do on each turn as this game proceeds.
Yeah, Riku took a pretty quick mulligan of his first hand, but for Kenta, this hand is literal perfection. You have the green source for the turn 1 Heart's Desire. You have 2 pieces of interaction for whatever creatures Riku starts out with on the play. And because you're playing this Gruul Adventures deck, you're not running out of gas. The first 2 spells of the game that you're probably playing in Heart's Desire and Stomp will just come down on turn 3 as creatures. So for Kenta, you can't really ask for a better hand, and I would be terrified in Riku's position if I saw this hand and knew what I was up against.
Well, nevertheless, the Gruul's got a Gruul, and let's go smashing. So let's see what Riku Kumagai can do here. On the back foot, down a game against Kenta Harane, managing to pick up that victory on the draw. So starting things off here with a Heart's Desire. Now, I wanted to ask you, Mani, the Fire Prophecy. Usually we see Scorching Dragonfire in this position. What do you think the advantages or disadvantages is over having Fire Prophecy in that slot?
Scorching Dragonfire has 2 things going for it over Fire Prophecy. The first one is being able to deal damage to Planeswalkers, but Planeswalkers not the most prevalent card type in the current metagame, which is a nice change of pace, but with the rotation of War of the Spark, something that we saw leave standard as well, was something like 36 Planeswalkers. So there's just not that many of the card type running around, one of the few being sideboard copies of Garruk or Vivian Monsters Advocate, as we see in Riku's hand. But the removal of those from standard means being able to hit Planeswalkers, not that relevant. The second one is Exile. And again, we don't really see cards that Exile is that relevant against. Kroxa is one of them. You typically hit it while the sacrifice trigger is on the stack and it gets exiled. Great, but Kroxa, not something that this Gruul deck is that worried about answering, but they do have access to the copies of Dragonfire in the sideboard. Fire Prophecy gives you card selection. And when we're talking about a Gruul deck that is really just trying to sort through its cards and make sure that its draws are as consistent as possible, this is the type of removal spell that you're happy main decking, because it's great in the Gruul Mirror. It'll keep you alive. It'll answer the creatures your opponent is playing, but it also works towards that game plan of making sure that every turn you are enacting the most consistent game plan possible, and you're finding those Embercleaves, you're finding those Great Henges, and you're able to just continue getting stronger and stronger.
A long think here about whether or not to Bone Crusher this Heart's Desire token in response. And Kenta goes for it. So making sure that that spell fizzles in essence. No trigger off of an Edgewall Innkeeper that we know is in hand, and now Kenta Harane is aware of. So what do you think of that play there, Money?
I love it. I think Kenta realizes that Riku is on a mulligan. He's already working with less resources than he needs access to have a good shot in this game. And to deny Riku of another one in that Bone Crusher Giant, as well as deny a potential value from an Edgewall Innkeeper, Kenta's in the position to be able to afford to do that. And the really biggest thing about it is, from Kenta's point of view, Riku was on the play. It's been 3 turns and Riku has not played a creature, his Stomp is not getting more value than exactly that spot.
Yeah, and you would have thought, well, now Kenta Harane is very much in the lead here, but now Riku Kumagai with this A Crow in War stealing the biggest creature and will be able to deploy the Great Henge next turn. So that card disadvantage is going to be going away very, very quickly as this powerful artifact makes its way onto the battlefield. But speaking of power, here comes Vivian Monster's Advocate, able to just gum up this battlefield with creatures and get value off of whatever else is going to be played. We also see a Great Henge of Kenta Harane's own on top of the library there.
Yeah, we are really seeing why players are opting for the Crowan War as the card of choice in these mirror matches and these creature-based matchups. Just the fact that, one, Riku has stolen Kenta's Lovestruck Beast, so Kenta wasn't able to attack for any damage that past turn. 2, on the next turn, Kenta is going to lose his Edgewall Innkeeper by being forced to attack with it. And 3, because Riku was able to steal Kenta's Lovestruck Beast, has the option of casting his own Great Henge this turn. Means in a game where Riku looked quite behind, thanks to the swing that this Akroan War provided, based on just this one card, suddenly Riku is looking right back into the thick of things.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Unfortunately, didn't find the 5th land there, though. Would have loved to have deployed the Great Henge as well as the Kazandu Mammoth, but has to use that as a land instead. Passes the turn back. Just going to sit quite happily here, not too fussed about the Vivian, waiting for these creatures to attack now. So in this situation, does Kenta, just sit back and take a turn off, knowing that the creatures will have to attack next turn? Or this turn, excuse me.
I believe the creatures have to attack this turn.
This turn, yes.
So
right.
Kent is trying to think about, I'm not able to get my Great Henge deployed this turn. So what is the most I can do here in my current position with the tools given to me? Does not want to really put himself in a position where he doesn't get that Lovestruck Beast back. And now it's just a matter of get the most value from my Vivian, play the creature off the top, and once again have a setup turn for what I could be doing the turn after.
Turn after can be really impressive indeed with Embercleave and the Great Henge at the ready, as we're now just playing every single card out that we possibly can, getting as much value off of the Edgewall Innkeeper while it's alive. And there they go, the Beast and the Innkeeper swinging on in. They're going to... Oh no, the Edgewall Innkeeper gets to live.
Yeah, it's going to deal damage to itself this turn anyways.
Oh yes,
so
it will die.
For Riku, it's just I'd rather take 1 damage than 3 and just keep my creatures on the battlefield.
Yes. All right, so now the Lovestruck Beast goes back to its owner. No 1/1 on the battlefield, but we do have a spare in the second copy of the Lovestruck Beast that's in hand here. So this is still going to be a really nasty turn next turn for Kenta. So there's going to have to be something very impressive from Riku Kumagai's side of things.
Yeah, Riku is able to put 2 more creatures onto the battlefield here, thanks to Kazandu Mammoth off the top because of Vivian's ability, as well as creating a creature because of Vivian. But now we see Kenta has access to his full board. Kenta has access to the Embercleave in hand in the removal spell in Fire Prophecy, and now we're going to see exactly how much Kenta's able to put up here, or how much he wants to put up here.
So it looks like we're going to go for a Great Henge first and foremost, then get one of the 1-drops down and still have enough for Embercleave. Oh no, we don't have enough for Embercleave now. So this is not the Embercleave turn. This is the Great Henge turn, right?
If Kenta attacks with all his creatures, he will still be able to play Embercleave. One of the interesting points here is if Kenta actually chooses to play the Great Henge first, yes, he will draw a card off Edgewall Innkeeper, but it won't be a 1/1 anymore. So he'll be putting himself from 2 1/1s to only the Heart's Desire token available as a 1/1. And in his position, that would allow Riku to turn off attacks from Lovestruck Beast with a single removal spell. So I think given how much card advantage Kenta actually currently has, it would better suit him to just keep that Edgewall Innkeeper as a 1/1, say that I don't need the card off of this in this exact position, and instead prioritize having the backup 1/1 for this Lovestruck Beast.
Looks like that's the plan, as we saw Fire Prophecy send something back now. And in with the team we go. Embercleave at the ready. And Riku Kumagai is just going to be sitting there saying, I really hope you don't have this card. But 9 times out of 10, the cleave is believed in, and it's going to come on down.
Yeah, things aren't looking the worst for Riku. Does still have Vivian on the battlefield, does still have 2 creatures in hand, and his Great Henge is living. So we're going to still have time for Riku to draw some cards and try to come back into this game. But again, we see the players really prioritizing card advantage less and life totals more. So the fact that Riku is facing 14 from this attack with Embercleave pushing it to, I believe, 21 means that, yes, Riku isn't facing lethal here, but he does still need to make some blocks if he wants to at least ensure that his life. Oh, sorry, I actually missed the Vigilance token. He was facing much more than that.
Right, so blocking the biggest thing on the battlefield and hoping to kill one of the smaller. As Embercleave looks for a target, the 5/5's looking mighty juicy. There's nothing that Riku Kumagai can do here besides just take a bunch of damage. The 4/4 is going to kill the mammoth. Swing in for a bunch of damage. Down to 9 goes Riku Kumagai, who is not looking good here at all.
Yeah,
got any of those storms rats?
I don't believe the list has it, unfortunately.
No, none of them.
Yeah, for Riku, the consideration in those blocks was really making sure that if Kenta wanted to push damage through by putting Cleave on something like the Lovestruck Beast, he would be able to keep his Kazandu Mammoth, and Kenta would lose the token. So by putting the Embercleave on the 3/3 token, he actually saved himself a decent amount of life thanks to the 1/1 block on the Mammoth. But again, right now, this is just Riku trying to dig himself out of the hole that he is in thanks to this board state. Wilt is a start. That is really getting rid of the big burst damage source from Kenta, but Riku still has a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of creatures on that board.
Yeah, thankfully, though, he does have access to Edgewell Innkeeper and the Great Henge, just being able to, generate more and more creatures, find more of them to get down on this battlefield. This Wilt's going to have to leave up 2 mana to kill the Embercleave. He should be able to stay alive, I believe.
It's going to be tight. I don't think he can afford to cast any more creatures this turn, as he'll want to cast both Fire Prophecy and Wilt. Fire Prophecy wanting to go on that Kazandu Mammoth, probably. Wilt will be saved for mid-combat, but things are still looking scary for Riku, though not as bad as they were going into that turn.
Yeah, for sure. So sitting at a relatively healthy 11, I should say. Now going to prepare for the attack to come, as Kenta Harane draws a forest off the top of the library. So not terrifying, not a scary draw.
Ooh. In Kenta's position, he actually has the option of just casting Lovestruck Beast here to draw the Akroan War and cast it immediately. And I think that may put him in a position where he's actually able to push through lethal. Instead, he's prioritizing casting this Great Henge, which will give him an extra card here, but it will result in him not being able to cast the Akroan War this turn, which is unfortunate.
Do you think we'll see a Vivian minus here? I'm not sure for what, though. What he'd be interested to find. I mean, yeah, the Akroan War, being able to find that would be, or being able to get that and steal one of these blockers would be very, very helpful indeed in terms of pushing damage through, because obviously Kenta Harane doesn't know about the Wilt, doesn't know that this Embercleave is going to go away and that this poor little beast is going to die.
Yeah, Kenta, because he was on the draw, has actually boarded out all copies of Brushfire Elemental. We see
Hmm.
Riku's Singleton copy sitting in hand. So Vivian Minus here would probably be fetching something like a Scavenging Ooze. Maybe that's what Kenta is going for here. Likely seems to be the case. And just trying to get more and more card advantage over getting another token here.
Yeah. Just getting as many creatures out as possible as the Lovestruck Beast comes down. Vivian's trigger being moved to the back. Edgewall Innkeeper going to draw a card, finds the Akroan War. And now the Scavenging Ooze out on the battlefield too. With another Edgewall Innkeeper on top. Man, this engine when it gets going is absolutely nutty as Fire Prophecy being fired off here on the Kazandu Mammoth from Riku Kumagai's side of things. That's one creature down. Several dozen more to deal with.
Yeah, we're not often used to aggressive decks having access to this much card advantage, and that's really one of the hallmarks of this Gruul Adventures deck is just the sheer amount of cards it can draw. And now, because of that wilt on top, Kenta is actually able to deal with the biggest problem that Riku was presenting, which is that Great Henge. Now Riku's card advantage is being cut off, and things are looking better and better for Kenta as the game goes on.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just so many creatures, so many ways to get cards on this battlefield. And just having Vivian being able to clear creatures off the top of the library too, being able to cast them that way. It's like everything is looking really, really good here for Kenta, but still has to figure out a way to get this victory as there is a wilt in hand here for Riku Kumagai. Let's see how the blocks are tendered.
Yeah, you see Kenta really valuing those 1/1s, believing that they're not going to change the math on this attack in any meaningful way. And anything that Riku has to survive here would mean that if he risked those 1/1s, he wouldn't be able to attack with his Lovestruck Beasts the next turn, which would be a much bigger deal. So instead, Kenta just playing it safe, keeping the 1/1s back. This will allow Riku to survive and get some profitable blocks here now.
First things first, wilts on the Embercleave. That's no longer a factor in this matchup. Blocking the biggest creatures. Gonna get hit for 6. And go down to 5. As we see a wilt in response, just killing that Great Henge and making sure that no further creatures are going to be drawing any more friends off the top of the library. Or gaining life, importantly.
Yeah, getting rid of that Great Henge means you're taking 2 mana away from Riku, 2 life away from Riku, and any potential number of cards. And that's actually the biggest hit here in Riku's position, as the tools that he has in hand are not looking like enough to deal with this board state. He doesn't even know about the Akroan War or the Stomp sitting on top of Kenta's deck, but things are just continuing to get worse and worse for Riku.
Yeah, for sure. As we see Bonecrusher Giant come down, we draw a card. It's a land off the top of the library. So getting back one of those lost mana. But I mean, what's the best way to not die here? I guess is the question. Do we steal something from Kenta's side of things, or do we just try and get as many creatures down as possible?
Yeah, I think the game plan is get as many creatures down as possible. So stealing something and playing a Heart's Desire token does actually put Kenta ahead on board in terms of it does put Riku ahead on board in terms of creatures compared to Kenta, but it's really going to be a matter of Kenta doing the math then on his turn to see if with the Akroan War and the Bonecrusher Giant Stomp, he's able to swing it back around in his favor to push through a lethal attack.
Yeah, just like you were saying, it's unusual to see aggro decks with so much access to card advantage, but here we're seeing why this deck is so incredibly powerful. It's got the big dudes that you want to get on the battlefield and start smacking things with. It's got the card advantage, it's got the draw, it's got the engine, it's got the powerful planeswalker, and it's got ways to disrupt what you're doing by destroying either your creatures or stealing them. So just these Gruul Adventure decks are just so good.
Yeah, Riku had Kenta had quite an incredible turn last turn, and even so, from the position that Riku was in going into his turn, the fact that he's able to put up this sort of board state and really still put Kenta in a position where he actually feels like he may not be able to get lethal through is still just a testament to the sheer power of this Gruul deck.
Yes. Bone Crusher Giant, one of the MVPs in these lists, dealing with the Edgewall Innkeeper. Now going to be drawing 3 cards. Never mind. Would you like 3 cards for your 3/3? Sorry, for your 4/3? Sure.
I do not mind.
Let's have some cards. Let's find some monsters. Finds a couple lands and a Scorching Dragonfire. So if we steal in response, can we win here? Is what Kenta's thinking.
If Kenta was to steal a Lovestruck Beast, he would have 6 attackers to Riku's 4 blockers, and he would be able to push 4 damage through. But because he's lacking another red source to also cast the Scorching Dragonfire, he is not in a position where he's able to push through anymore. As it stands, he does still want to steal the creature and just get the best attacks he can through. But again, this is not playing for lethal. This is playing to put Riku in a tough position before he's able to get that next turn and try to continue coming back into the game.
So just the Lovestruck Beast and the 2 beast tokens off of Vivian swinging in here. Just doing some quick mental maths and saying, all right, there you go. Riku, you deal with these creatures.
Yeah, trying to figure out what Riku can afford to not block, what Riku can afford to double block. Fortunately for Kenta, there is no good double block available to Riku. Any 2 creatures that go in front of this Lovestruck Beast would end up dying. So we'll likely see a chump on the beast from maybe the 1/1 token, and that it's just a matter of whether Riku wants to trade off for both of these beast tokens or whether he wants to take the 3 down to 2, which would be slightly risky. I think what we're going to see is 1/1 on 6/6, 3/3 on 3/3, 4/3 on 3/3, and just try to keep his life total up, even though things are getting bad.
Yeah, this is not looking really good here for Riku Kumagai at the moment. As we see the blocks tendered, prioritizing getting rid of this Lovestruck Beast and chumping the 3/3 and I'm going to be trading with the other one. So 2 for 1 there with the Lovestruck Beast, killing 2 creatures. Now nothing left on this battlefield. What do you do against this besides Scoop? Oh boy.
Scoop's looking mighty tempting right now.
Scoop is looking mighty tempting.
7 attackers on the other side of the battlefield. Honestly, Riku doesn't know about it, but that Primal Might sitting on top of Kenta the Library is just going to be GG. There's no coming back from that one. But yeah, this game has been looking tough for a while now. Riku has been fighting the uphill battle, and the sheer power of this Gruul deck has allowed him to survive for 2 to 3 more turns than anybody really expected him to, based on how the start of this game had gone and what Kenta's opening hand was. But eventually, the player that has had the momentum, that has put the other player on the back foot, is going to be the one winning. The big thing here is, even if Riku was to stabilize, which was already a big feat to pull off, Kenta's sitting at 24 life. There's no punk out victory coming from Riku. Riku at 5 is the one that has everything to lose here, as any combination of 2 to 3 cards off the top for Kenta, a second Ember Cleave drawn, a Shatterskull Smashing, could have just put this game away. And it's just been what we've been seeing for this entire game, is Riku Kumagai starting from that very first mulligan, fighting an uphill battle against Kenta's much more answer-oriented draw.
Yeah. So just delaying the inevitable here is Riku Kumagai going to keep the Scavenging Ooze activated ability at the ready, gain 3 life, go back up to 8. But then what? Then what is the answer? Or then what is the question, I should say, as we found an answer here in Primal Might off the top of the library, like you mentioned. And one of these creatures is going to get forcibly removed, as we'll see a swing in here for lethal from Kenta Harane.
Yeah, the answer to then what is death.
Then what? Well, unfortunately, Riku, you die. But that's what you can expect from these Gruul mirror matches this weekend, as we do see the Edgewall Innkeeper engaging in fisticuffs potentially with this love-struck beast. Remove one of these blockers and then get swinging. Maybe this time the small creatures will get to attack.
Interestingly, for Kenta, choosing to remove the Lovestruck Beast rather than the Scavenging Ooze, given the number of creatures in graveyards, the Scavenging Ooze is going to be the same size as the Lovestruck Beast, so this would have forced Riku to use some mana and make the Ooze bigger, but really it doesn't matter. This game was over.
Yeah, this game was over, like you mentioned a couple turns ago, just delaying the inevitable there, but a really, really clean victory there for Kenta Harane. 2-0, looking good, and going to continue on his winning streak. We are going to head to a very, very short break, friends. When we come back, there'll be plenty more action after this.
So look at this. 2 Thieves Guild Enforcer triggers, milling out for 2. And if our count is correct here, an attack with this Thieves Guild Enforcer, which will trigger both, with the Soaring Thought Thieves, will trigger both, and that's another 4 cards. And there they go. None left in the library for Sebastian Pozzo. The control deck gets milled out, and a masterful performance.
Right, what a turn here. Look at this. So punch the giant. Primal Might. The only downside is that the beast doesn't get to get in there either.
That's the only frown.
I'm not going to complain. Just killing your opponent's entire board, including the window to kill Vivian right when you really needed to. Super, super brutal turn there.
All right, let's have a look. Oh, there's the dragon and a beanstalk giant. That is 7 straight to the dome here. And this is exactly what you want. This is textbook Team Ramp. Oh, at the top. Okay, wow, couldn't cast that fast enough. Let's see what we hit here. Bam! Wow, it doesn't get much better than that. Wow, it doesn't get much better than that. Look at that, a Terror of the Peaks, 11 damage going straight at the dome, and an Ugin to follow it up as well. How you like them apples? Shintaro can't believe it. Look at his face. Look at his face.
Oh, that was interesting. So Luis actually went for Drown in the Loch just to kill the Soaring Thought Thief. He may not have had enough in the graveyard, as Luis hasn't really been able to get much going to get his Drown in the Lochs to full capacity just yet.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Luis is in some serious trouble here. It doesn't look like there are any lands. Not the ideal draw for him. And
that was brutal too.
Yeah, you saw that Thieves Guild Enforcer. That was a 3-2 into a 1-1, and now we're going to resolve this. And we are.
That is going to be game. Yeah, and I think Kai knows that this one is over, and so does Luis Scott Vargas. He's going to pack it in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to League Weekend. Here we're watching some Rivals players play in a round robin tournament as they gather points for their placement in end of the season tournament. So we have one round from our feature match under the belt, but we've got more action from round number 1 here coming up. One of the players we're going to see in just a couple of minutes is none other than Numat the Nummy Kenji Igashira, who's definitely brought a spicy list for us this weekend. Azorius Blink. Let's take a look here. Mani, walk me through this deck list.
Yeah, this deck is sweet. This deck is in the trend of these Yorion decks that we've been seeing try to be an answer to some of the archetypes like Gruul by having a ton of answers. But the cool things about this deck are no third color for Kenji, not going for any Doom Foretold shenanigans, instead trying to maximize the blinking with Yorion. Some of the really cool cards in the deck are things like Baron, Tolarian Archmage, and Glasspool Mimic. Mimic actually one of my favorite cards from Zendikar Rising, and something that I think we'll see more and more play throughout his time in Standard. Just having a clone effect, even if it's a self-clone attached to a land, is something that is extremely powerful and leaves a lot of options up. Old favorites like Solemn Simulacrum making themselves seen in this deck, and really just setting up your larger spells like Ugin the Spirit Dragon, like that one copy of Ondu Inversion. And one of the things that these blue-white Yorion decks have really started making use of is the new mythic from Zendikar Rising, Emeria's Call. Emeria's Call just serving as the perfect late game finisher for these decks while also being an early land. And this deck just has everything you need to take the most advantage of this Yorion companion you have, as well as the copies of Yorion in your deck with cards like Skyclave Apparition and the 7 copies of Omens that Kenji has here.
You love to see Baneslayer Angel in this list too. And Dream Trawler, welcome back, old friend. How do you like Kenji's matchup versus Yuta Takahashi? He's playing Gruul Adventures.
I think it should be in Kenji's favor. The full 4 copies of Glass Casket, 3 copies of Shadow of the Sky, and 2 copies of Essence Scatter in the main, as well as those Baneslayer Angels, will all do a lot to keep Kenji in the game and competitive against the aggressive deck. Skyclave Apparition, another card that is just extremely powerful against Gruul in any deck that is trying to play these cheap, efficient creatures, replacing them with less useful tokens and just getting them off the board in general with a 3-drop creature is just so good that I think this should be in Kenji's favor. But as is the case with Gruul, you can just lose to any sort of explosive draw at any point.
All right, well, we're heading into game 3. Let's head down to the match.
Thank you very much, Maria. All right, Money, let's see how this match is gonna shake out, as both players are at 1 apiece. Yuta Takahashi with the win, as well as Kenji Igashira. So game number 3 here. Temple of Enlightenment gonna kick things off. Let's see what Kenji can do with this Azorius Blink deck.
Yeah, it looks like Yuta did win game 2. So fortunately for Kenji, he's on the play for this 3rd game. Really important in this matchup, as things can snowball quite a bit. And as far as this hand goes, it's close to perfect. We see the 2 mana removal in the Glass Casket. We see the Skyclave Apparition, and we see the Omen of the Sea on top. So Kenji is able to set up his future turns as well. I expect that we won't see him cast Charming Prince on turn 2. We'll just see him go for Omen of the Sea, or even actually prioritizing playing the tap land here. But for Kenji, this is the type of hand you want to see when it comes to a deciding game against this Gruul Adventures deck.
Oh yes, just having answers in multiple sources, having this Glass Casket to deal with any small creatures, Skyclave Apparition coming down, making sure that this creature won't come back as it is. And just setting up really, really nicely here for Yorion's Sky Nomad to come down and get maximum value off of all these things that he can blink.
Yeah, one of the big value engines of this blue-white deck is Baron Tolarian Archmage plus Yorion, being able to get that loop going and continue just returning the Yorion to hand and getting essentially infinite triggers at the cost of the tempo of casting Yorion turn after turn is something that is so cool. And Baron has that mana war effect. You can return your opponent's creatures as well, and that works so well with the tokens that get made off of Skyclave Apparition.
Yeah.
Typically in these Yorion decks, we see Glass Casket as the card of choice to keep those tokens in check. But this blue-white deck has introduced Baron as well. So yet another way to make sure that you can play Skyclave Apparition with close to no downside in this blue-white deck.
Yeah, close to no downside, like you mentioned. Like, you expect these cards to get stomped, but it's okay because you have an answer for whatever is left behind once the Skyclave Apparition is stomped on. So a really, really great card, a great addition from Zendikar Rising, as we see Clothis come down on this battlefield, and we'll start munching away at Kenji's graveyard.
Yeah, unfortunately for Kenji, the Skyclave Apparition is his best answer to Clothis, and the fact that it's already been used to deal with that Brushfire Elemental means that as it stands, he doesn't have an answer. But fortunately for Kenji, Yuta hasn't presented that much pressure. This is the peak of it, and this allows Kenji to feel more comfortable, go digging for potentially another Skyclave Apparition, and if worse comes to worse, just put Yorion into hand and try to have a bit more of a setup turn here as he prepares for what the next turn brings him.
Yeah. So not finding Skyclave Apparition, finds a Shadow of the Sky, and you could almost see the deliberation on his face. There's like, yeah, I'd really like to keep this to kill all the other things, but I have this clock now in the form of Clothis. going to be pinging away at me every single turn, provided that there's cards in the graveyard for her to exile.
Yeah, things looking decent for Kenji, but Clothis being on the battlefield is still scary. One of the problematic cards in the matchup also for Kenji is sitting in Yuta's hand there in Vivian Monster's Advocate. Kenji's blue-white blink deck is actually one that doesn't feature main deck copies of Elspeth Conquers Death, as we're used to seeing in some other Yorion-based decks. Kenji actually only has the 2 copies in the sideboard, and I'm not sure if Kenji actually opted to bring them in this matchup. So we'll see if or when Yuta chooses to cast Vivian Monster's Advocate, whether Kenji will actually have a clean way to answer it.
Time will tell. As first things first, let's get Glass Casket down on the battlefield and nick one of these 3 CMC creatures.
Yeah, I expect for Kenji, this is really going to be a tempo turn. Glass Casket, the Bone Crusher Giant, Charming Prince, Blink Your Baron, return Kazandu Mammoth back to Yuta's hand, and say, okay, I've negated essentially what you've done the last turn, but I've added 2 more cards that I'm happy to blink with my Yorion to my side of the battlefield. So the onus is on you to have a really good turn coming up, because you know that if you don't, I'm going to have a really good turn coming up.
Yeah, there's just so much value of this deck, especially when it gets going. As soon as you start all these loops with the Charming Prince, with Yorion Sky Nomad, even the 1 copy of Thassa that Kenji's running in the deck, like it's almost impossible to break it if you have all those things going. But one way you can do that is just Shadow Skull Smash the way the creatures that are doing all the blinking. So back to scratch goes Kenji as he nods the head there, acknowledging the good play there from Yuta Takahashi, as Yorion comes down and doesn't have too much to do except send back this Omen of the Sea.
Yeah, the Shadow Skull smashing off the top was an excellent draw from Yuta. Being able to utilize Klothis' ability to exile a land and create the 6 mana he needed to destroy both of Kenji's creatures. The threat of Yorion was ever looming there, and from Yuta's point of view, just can't really allow Yorion to come down and blink all those creatures. So yes, it was a minus tempo turn in that he wasn't able to develop any creatures on the battlefield, but it was ultimately necessary in order to really put Kenji's game plan in check.
Yeah, for sure. As we now see Vivian Monster's Advocate down the battlefield, plussing. I'm going to give reach to one of the 3/3s and follow it up with a Edgewall Innkeeper. Dream Troll off the top of the library. Hello, Big Bird. Haven't seen this card in forever.
We are in the position that Kenji wants to be in, able to clear off that reach token, clear off Vivian, has Yorion still in play, and now he even has access to negate. So as of the next turn, he could just be leaving up negate if he feels like Embercleave at any point would be problematic, and if not, he can just continue to tap out. He has Dream Trawler now, and Vivian was the big card he was really worried about on this board as its continued card advantage. Now that Vivian's gone, it's on Yuta to present something like another Vivian, like a Great Hedge, because a 1/1 Edgewall Innkeeper and a Klothis are not getting the job done, even with an Embercleave.
No. Edgewall Innkeeper can get a little scary with an Embercleave on him, but yeah, it's certainly not a threat when you have a 4/4 on the battlefield. Following up soon, very shortly, with this Dream Trawler.
And this is funny because this is Yuta telegraphing that he has an Embercleave in hand, but Kenji's actually still considering blocking, because doing so would force Yuta to use 5 mana here to cast that Embercleave on an Edgewall Innkeeper. And for Kenji, yeah, he's losing his Baron, but Yuta isn't able to develop any other creatures this turn. So for Kenji, he's actually okay with this.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it too, as it goes down to 13. Leaves the plains on top of the library. Gonna draw that now. And I don't think we'll have enough mana for both, but soon. Isn't able to keep up the negate. As Klothis keeps chipping away at the life total here, down to 11 now. goes Kenji. It's going to have to start applying the pressure, and what better way to do that than with these two big birds?
Yeah, so this is actually going to be a big turn for Yuta, as playing that Kazandu Mammoth will turn Clothis into a creature, and this would allow Yuta to equip the Embercleave onto the Clothis and actually present an attack for 10 damage here. And this is something that Kenji was not really well equipped to deal with given his current hand.
No, not at all, but it's attacking with both creatures here.
I
think that might have been an oops.
Yeah, we saw an oops from Yuta. Now, Kenji, I think because he's actually being gifted 3 life here by Yuta, he may not feel the need to block the Clothis. He's currently got it lined up anyways, just to be safe, take an extra 5 points of damage off consideration. But yeah, another oops. Yuta clearly feeling the costs that attack from the Edgewall Innkeeper gives him, is not only does he gift Kenji 3 life, but he actually turned off his own Clothis, which is the much bigger cost there for Yuta, as now on the next turn, given we know the makeup of his hand, if Yuta's not able to draw something that gives him devotion, and the Skyclave Apparition off the top, things are just getting from bad to worse for Yuta Takahashi.
Oh yes, things getting from bad to worse, exactly right. As now we have Skyclave Apparition and an Elspeth Conquers Death to be able to deal with Clothis. And with this Dream Trawler just chipping away, or I say chipping away, there's big chunks of damage coming down now. We're going to pad this life total, and Kenji is looking very, very good here indeed. Takahashi is going to have to draw something a bit more impactful than a Brushfire Elemental off the top of the library here.
Yeah, that's 2 devotion, but it still puts him at 6. Once again, unfortunately, because of that attack from the Edgewall Innkeeper. And now Yuta does have 8 damage presented from this Brushfire Elemental with this Embercleave, but this isn't going to get the job done, not against this Dream Trawler. This Dream Trawler is representing, at minimum, 5 life a turn, and thanks to that Maze My Tome in play, Kenji's got another 4 life lined up there. Elspeth Conquers Death is certainly going to come down next turn and answer this Embercleave, and I think this is Kenji just closing the door on Yuta, saying that you put up a good fight, but I've got all the tools I need to now end this game, even with your life total currently sitting at 20.
Yeah, and you've got to think, even with that, that slight misstep in sending the Edgewall Innkeeper in, this hand from Kenji is just absolutely nuts. Like, Elspeth Conquers Death, Shadow of the Sky, Glass Casket, we've got negates. Just so many ways to deal with whatever threat Takahashi puts forth.
Yeah, if Yuta had access to that Edgewall Innkeeper, that Clothis would have still been a creature this past turn. Kenji would have been at 3 less life, and maybe we could have seen a lethal attack cobbled together from Yuta the previous turn. So certainly the rippling effects of that decision still being felt. And as it is, Kenji is able to just remove that Brushfire Elemental and pass this turn if he wants, with Omen of the Sun and Negate available, to just ensure that there's no real way that he loses.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to go for the Elspeth Conquers Death here, just doing some quick mental maths, like if there's another Brushfire Elemental with the Fabled Passage, do I die to an attack here?
Yeah, I think Kenji's consideration is something like, let's say, a Questing Beast off the top and equip the Embercleave to it, which would be 10 damage coming through. But thankfully, because of that Omen of the Sun in hand, he would be able to gain 2 and block 2 of that damage. And because of that Maze My Tome in play as well, he's got 4 more life to pad, as otherwise that would have actually been a scary line. But with everything that he had available to him, Kenji created more or less a lock situation here where he thought through it, and there are just